Hello, welcome to Shaka Extra Time. I am Paul Ndiho. Shaka Sali is off, and my colleague Peter Clottey, the host and managing editor of Nightline Africa, is filling in for Shaka Sali. Hello, Peter.
Hello, Paul.
How are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
I'm great. How is Accra?
Accra is peaceful and quiet. People are going about their normal activities as if it's normal day life. It is people are just going about their normal duties, going to work, coming home. You know, to a lot of people, the election is just behind them. Now is the time to move forward.
Let's talk about the elections. It looks like President Nana Akufo-Addo won a re-election with at least 51.6% of the vote. How did it come to that number? I've seen reports where the opposition says that the election itself was not free, fair, and credible, and therefore they are challenging the outcome of the election.
Well, Paul, in Ghana, when the candidate loses an election, there is a recourse or there is an avenue, a channel to address concerns of the losing candidate. If the losing candidate has compelling evidence to prove beyond all shadow of doubt that what transpired is overwhelming to enable the justices to overthrow or squash or cancel or overturn the outcome of the elections, they will do that. However, since 1992, anybody who has lost an election, any candidate who has lost an election and taken the matter to court, have not been able to prove beyond all shadow of doubt that the elections were rigged. It's a human institution, so you expect it to have some flaws. Yes, flaws come, but the underlying theme is that are the flaws so egregious that it will undermine the integrity of the election or affect the outcome of the election? And the conclusion has always been that the process has always been fair, irrespective of some of the challenges that come. So, yes, I'm not surprised that the opposition, in this case, the National Democratic Congress, the biggest opposition party in the country, is contesting the election. Now, when I spoke with their presidential candidate, former President John Dramani Mahama, he said that there should be an independent inquiry into the conduct of the elections. Now, if the independent, thorough, or forensic investigations prove that the incumbent president, Nana Akufo-Addo, has won the election, he will be the first person to concede and congratulate him, and as he said, to quote him, and walk away.
And of course, this would not be the first time he has actually conceded to Nana Akufo-Addo, correct?
Correct. I asked him about that. One of the questions I asked him was that 4 years ago, in 2016, you lost the election, you conceded. Why are you not doing it now? And then he says that the Electoral Commission was incompetent in administering the election. First, the Electoral Commission said they were going to come out with the outcome of the election or announce the winner within 24 hours or 24 hours after the polls officially closed on December 7th. Due to some challenges and difficulties they had nationwide, it was pushed to the next day, which meant that it was 48 hours. And some of the figures did not pan out. They had to come and make some course correction and all that. And that is why the former president is saying that if the Electoral Commission cannot get its acts right to administer free, fair, transparent, and credible election, and then cannot even justify figures it used and it's keep on correcting it, then basically it has undermined its own credibility and competence in terms of carrying out this very crucial assignment, which is to organize elections in Ghana. Of course, the Electoral Commission is the only constitutionally mandated entity in Ghana to organize elections in the country. And that is why he said he is calling for an independent forensic audit into what happened to determine the actual winner of the election. He told me that if the forensic audit concludes that he lost the election, he will concede and walk away. Now, if the final or the outcome of the inquiry is that he won the election, then the incumbent president cannot be re-elected, and that he will be the next president. So these are some of the things they are doing. But he also told me that they have lawyers from the National Democratic Congress, the biggest opposition party, who are compiling the evidence now. It is based on the evidence that they have that would determine their next line of action, whether to go to court or not. So it remains to be seen what they are going to do.
You raised a very interesting point. Following the contentious polls, of course, both candidates at some point were leading. Is there some kind of credibility to what the opposition is saying? If I heard you correctly, you said that there were issues with how the Electoral Commission conducted or announced the final results. So could there be something there that can alter what has already been announced?
Well, for now, the opposition party is compiling evidence to back up their claim that there were some voter irregularities. Now, as to whether as I said, it's a human institution. As to whether it will be compelling and overwhelming is another matter, because you have to go to court if you decide to legally challenge the outcome of the election. You have to prove your case in point, beyond all shadow of doubt, that there were voter irregularities. They were quite heavy and huge that could affect the outcome of the election. Then the justices will take that into consideration before making a formal decision on whether to throw out the results, order re-election, or whatever. It is theirs to make. But several claims have been made. I have seen several video clips. Sometimes it's very difficult to determine that because I cannot independently verify the authenticity of the claim. And therefore, when you go to court, you have to basically authenticate or prove that what you have will work in your favor. So that is where we are at the moment. But some critics are saying that the former president, should concede and move on so the country can reconcile. Perhaps, a lot of people have moved on already, they tell me. So things will move on smoothly like it happened in 2016.
It seemed that going into the election, the incumbent president had an upper hand. Did anything change during the election itself, or is what we are seeing a true reflection of the will of the people?
Well, according to different surveys that were conducted in the run-up to the election, the president was leading in most of the polls. He had a slight advantage. There was one outlier, however, which showed that there could be a runoff. So one could say that the polls that were conducted ahead of the election might have predicted what happened when the electoral commissioner, in this case, the chairperson of the Electoral Commission, Attorney Jean Adokwe-Mensah, declared incumbent President Nana Akufo-Addo winner of the election. So surveys proved or showed that the president was ahead in the run-up to the election. And, when the results were declared, it was obvious that Nana Akufo had won. But then the opposition protested, saying that there were certain parts of the country where their numbers were the numbers were not a true reflection of what happened. So they are compiling the evidence at the moment. Nobody has seen the evidence except themselves. So we remain seated, just waiting for what they will come out and tell the public, and then their next line of action, whether to go to court or not.
Ironically, former President John Mahama has been crisscrossing the continent, talking about peaceful transitions of power and giving himself as an example who conceded after he lost to opposition. Surprisingly now, he doesn't want to concede. So what kind of message is that sending to some of those countries where he has actually observed elections and encouraged opposition to concede and move on?
Well, I asked him about that. I asked a similar question that, when he when he has conversations with some of his former colleagues, some of the former heads of state or heads of state, because he is deeply connected all across the continent and beyond, they are asking him what truly happened, and then he explains his stance to them, and that he says categorically that he will not incite people to create chaos or jeopardize the country's stability. All he wants, he says, is that for a thorough investigation to be done to determine whether the elections were free, fair, and transparent, like all Ghanaians expect. Now, if the conclusion determines that he has lost the election, he will accept and concede defeat. So this is his latest call on the Electoral Commission to allow itself for an independent forensic audit to determine whether the elections as was administered on December 7 were without flaws.
And that's within his constitutional rights to challenge
Absolutely.
the outcome of the election.
Absolutely. It's within his constitutional right to do so. But then there are avenues by which that can be addressed. There are institutions like the National Peace Council that usually will approach candidates and talk to them and try to resolve any concerns they have. The other aspect is also to go to court with your evidence to present your case and see where the chips may fall. So these are some of the issues that have to be dealt with.
What has President Nana Akufo-Addo, President-Elect, what has he said to his supporters? Is he confident that even if the opposition goes to court, he will carry the day?
It's not even about that. His supporters will tell you that he won the election. And don't forget that the international community, including very prominent African organizations, including the Economic Community of West African States, that sent poll observers to monitor Ghana's election, led by former Liberian President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, concluded that the elections were peaceful. Nobody was prevented from voting. It was transparent. They counted everything in the open. So there was no opacity or any cloud to try to manipulate the election. You had the African Union Poll Observer Mission led by former South African President Haile Motlanthe, who led the Poll Observer Mission. When I spoke with him, he said the elections were free, fair, and transparent, that in the polling stations, one of the polling stations that he visited, there were an initial confusion about how things would go, but it was quickly resolved and the election proceeded smoothly. So with these continental and sub-regional organizations talking about the credibility and transparency of the election, including local poll observers, saying that the elections were conducted in an atmosphere of peace and that people went to the polls to, without fear of intimidation or harassment, to vote for one candidate against the other, and then they freely chose who lead the country. It was clear. They told me that President-elect Nana Akufo-Addo has won the election. However, the opposition is challenging it. Now they are compiling evidence to prove their case. Let's wait and see what comes out.
Are the courts in Ghana credible?
For now, a lot of Ghanaians seem to have confidence in the independence of the judiciary. The one poll I saw was that about 60% of Ghanaians repose confidence in the judiciary. It remains to be seen what evidence will be compiled by the main opposition party. I don't know how compelling that will be. So it remains to be seen how things will pan out. We just have to sit tight and watch the space and see what the National Democratic Congress will come up with. Now, if one other option is, if they are unable to prove their case to their own satisfaction, then there wouldn't be any need to go ahead to the court, because if you can't satisfy your own curiosity and make your own case to convince yourself and your supporters that the elections were credible, then of course you might not be able to go to the court to make up your case. But let's see if they have the evidence to challenge it, and let's see what a decision the justices will make in connection to their claim that there were instances of voter irregularities.
How about the fact that for the first time in a long time, Parliament almost flipped. Opposition won more seats, and according to some of the reports that I've seen, they're almost 50-50. How is President Nana Akufo-Addo going to overcome that challenge?
Well, he is a lawyer by trade, so he has to be able to negotiate. He would have to, or his administration would have to be able to compromise to come to a certain agreement based on what he wants to do. So that is a challenge that I think he should grasp with both hands, because really he doesn't have a choice, because that is the verdict of the people who voted. So he has to work with what he has. And now some of his priorities, but then again, it is an opportunity for his administration to negotiate with the opposition in Parliament to get his priorities and developmental agenda on track. So yeah, it is an opportunity for both of these parties to work effectively together and move the process forward.
A lot of people, of course, credit Ghana for having carried out a very peaceful election. When you compare it to the campaigns that we see across Africa, the elections that we see across Africa, it sort of leaves a question that a lot of our political scientists haven't even figured out. Why is it that in Ghana you can have a peaceful campaign, a peaceful election, and a peaceful transfer of power, and we are yet to see some of that stuff maybe transcend across the different parts of Africa?
I think Ghanaians realize one thing, that they don't want to go back to military rule. I was reminded of the fact that before 1957, before Ghana gained independence, people went to the polls and chose their own leaders. And that is how Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, the first president of Ghana, led the country as a prime minister before independence. Of course, there were a few coups here, violent overthrow of government. And then in the 1980s, Jerry John Rawlings came on the scene, and then he ruled for 10 years, and it was a peaceful 10 years. But then it was a military regime. There are certain things that you couldn't do. And then he decided to run for election. He ran twice. He won election and won re-election again. And then his candidate, who was then his vice president, lost the election to John Agyekum Kufuor. Now, Ghanaians have known that since that time, they want to maintain the ability in their thumb to choose who their next leaders should be. And that has reflected in how Ghana has organized successive elections, where on two separate occasions it has transferred power from one political party to the other without any hitch, because they have experienced instability, they have experienced military rule, and they will prefer a democratic environment where they can freely express themselves without fear of intimidation, without fear of being harassed, without fear of state institutions being used against them. And that is why they are choosing. Now, in certain places right here in the capital, Accra, there's a constituency called Lejekuku. Now, in the Lejekuku constituency, they have never, since 2000, they have never confirmed or re-elected their member of parliament. They choose their members of parliament every 4 years. They change them.
Interesting.
Same thing is happening in a place close by me here in East Legon. They call it Adenta. Adenta has, since that time, they changed their parliament, their parliamentarian every 4 years. Now, it swings from one party to the other. This year, this party will win. In the next 4 years, they throw this one out, bring another person. So people are gradually being forceful, knowing that they have the power to choose who leads them. And they have been forceful that if you come and promise them and you don't keep your promise, they will throw you out. And that was a common refrain when I went into the streets to talk to people. And that is what they have been telling me.
I listened to President Akufo-Addo giving a victory speech, and I think he said that he was grateful for the victory, at the same time humbled by the confidence that he had earned their votes. But there are people who say that, wait a minute, this is the same guy whose administration or whose government has been labeled with a lot of corruption scandals. How does he address that?
He said he will spare no rod. Some of the allegations that were made, some of these individuals were officially cleared. And remember, similar allegations were made against the former president, which tarnished him in some instances that political analysts spoke with me about. That really undermined his candidacy. However, Nana Akufo-Addo was sold or marketed to Ghanaians as somebody who is a no-nonsense man who doesn't condone corruption. So it surprised a lot of people when various allegations of graft were labeled against members of his administration. Now, Ghanaians will tell you, as they told me, that they want the president to crack down on government appointees or his appointees who they seem to be inefficient or who they allege to be corrupt. The problem is, if you make an allegations of corruption, you have to bring proof that the person is corrupt. Now, anybody at all can make any accusation, but then if you have proof that the allegations are right, then you expect the higher power or the appointing authority to take action. Now, I am yet to personally see some of these evidence that show that Mr. A or Madam B is corrupt and has to be dealt with. So at the moment, these are allegations. Let's see how the president handles them.
What does the common man or ordinary person in Ghana expect of this outcome of the elections, or expect of President Nana Akufo-Addo?
For the supporters of the president, they said they gave the president-elect 4 more to do more, and that some of the things that he has carried out so far, like the free senior high school education, like a new policy he announced that if you go into tertiary institutions like the university or the polytechnics and you don't have funds to do that, by way of your admission, they could give you some money as a loan to pay your fees until you complete the school. So these are some of the things that they want the president to continue to institutionalize them. So even if he's not around anymore, he serves his 8 years, these things will continue. So now the onus lies with the president to keep his promises to Ghanaians.
How about the issue of unemployment? You have a lot of younger people who have gone to school, highly educated, but they can't find jobs in the formal sector or even in the private sector. How does he address the issue of unemployment for young Ghanaians?
In his first term, he came up with a scheme known as NAPCO, where they hired graduates who had just come from the university or completed the university, and he promised to do more of those programs to absorb some of these well-educated students into the system to help build the country. Now, he has yet to be officially installed. So let's wait. After his installation officially on January 3, then we can start asking him those pertinent questions. When is he going to begin that? What specific measures he would put in place? What strategic mechanisms he's going to put in place to create more jobs for the unemployment youth, to sharply reduce high unemployment rate, and create more avenues for businesses to grow, to attract foreign investors and improve overall the economic outlook of the country.
When you say installed, to me that seems to sound like as if it's a king or a monarch. And here we are talking about a republic.
Well, it's just a synonym to say he will be inaugurated. So basically, that's it. But he will be inaugurated or installed on January 3, and that has been the tradition in Ghana. In January, we know after an election in December, there is some form of maybe 3 to 4 weeks that will allow for any challenge or dispute to be resolved before a conclusion is made, and then the president is confirmed or determined to have won the election legitimately. Once that process is exhausted, then we all know who the president is. At the moment, President Nana Akufo-Addo is the president-elect after winning the December 7 presidential election. So the schedule is in January, he will be officially installed or inaugurated as the president. At the moment, he has constituted a committee that is acting as a transitional team. Of course, he's transitioning from his old administration to the anticipated new administration. So legally, he has set up this committee and they have begun working already.
Where does opposition go from here?
Well, for now, we don't know as yet because they are determining their next steps forward based on the information they have or the evidence they gather. So once they see that the evidence they have, the former president told me, if it is substantial, then they will decide whether to go to court or not. Otherwise, then they would have to just go back to the drawing board and prepare for the next 4 years.
Were you surprised by the outcome or any things that you observed as you covered this election?
Ahead of the election, I saw the polls that slightly gave the advantage to the president. However, there was a single poll, as I said initially, which showed that it was an outlier, which showed that it would be a runoff. So based on the announcement by the Electoral Commission, I have no doubt that one of the candidates won the election. However, an independent forensic investigation called by the former president perhaps could satisfy his teeming supporters, over 6 million of them who voted for him, that, okay, we fought a good fight. Our opponents, the president, won re-election. So we move on, go back to the drawing board, and come back in the next 4 years and perhaps try to win the election in the next 4 years. So that is how I will be able to address the question you asked me concerning my anticipation of who will win the election. When I got here, both parties were energized and supporters were claiming that they will win the election. Each party you speak to, even the so-called minor parties, or like the CPP, the PPP, all those parties were expressing confidence that they will shock people. But alas,
what happened?
The two major parties. Well, alas, the two major parties proved again that the country is sharply divided on two major lines: the ruling New Patriotic Party, the governing party, or the National Democratic Congress, the main opposition party.
Is there likelihood that President John Mahama, once he concedes, maybe his people will be absorbed within the ruling party?
Well, it is difficult to say, but then those who have been vociferous about claims of fraud or irregularities, voter irregularities, are staunch in their belief that they won the election.
Peter, any final thoughts?
So far in Ghana, it has remained peaceful. I have spoken to quite a number of people to get the temperature in the country, because sometimes you talk to people, they are saying, well, why isn't the former president conceding his great intention? Others are saying, well, the election is over, we are moving ahead with our lives, nothing can change it, and that if he wants, he should go to court, present his case, and see if the justices will side with him against the Electoral Commission. So it is pretty quiet here in Accra, and we await what comes next.
Very good. Thank you so much for your time, Peter. I look forward to hosting you on another edition of Shaka Extra Time.
I look forward to being on again. Thank you.
Thank you so much.